So what is going on, guys? NandoPrince93 here with another video, and today we got a fun one, right? So before we get started, again, still doing the giveaway for the Apple Pencil 2, 5K subs here, or 500 followers on Twitter, which I'll put below right here. And basically, whichever one comes first, I'll go on that platform and announce a Apple Pencil 2 giveaway, and we'll just go from there. So I really do appreciate the support. We've been killing it lately on both platforms, which is sick. And now for this video, I just want to show you guys a couple things that I found that really take advantage of the iPad Pro's 120 Hz Pro Motion Display. So what I'm going to do is top 5 games that support, or my top 5 favorite games that support 120 FPS for, you know, the most optimal version of gaming, right? So just to give a quick little background on mobile gaming and computer gaming, basically the higher the frame rate, supposedly the bigger advantage that that person has, because the more frames you can get per second means it's like the difference between basically like triggering faster, especially for shooting games. If you're playing a first-person shooter, frames per second do matter to an extent. If you're a beginner, it doesn't matter. If you're just playing for fun, it doesn't matter. But if you're competing and really trying to take advantage of every little thing, then frames per second matter. That's why nowadays you're seeing like 200 FPS. I think Razer came out with a 360 FPS. At that point, I don't know if you can really tell the difference, but it comes down to reaction time and how quickly what you want to happen will happen on the screen's end. So the higher the frame rate, the quicker the interaction happens, essentially, right? So with Apple's new 120 FPS or 120 Hertz display, the ProMotion display on the iPad Pro, which I do hope they bring to the iPhone next year, basically it allows you to view content in up to 120 FPS, so frames per second. And I found 5 really cool games that really take advantage of it, and you can kind of tell the difference, right? Especially if you're coming from like this, 30 or 60 FPS and you're going all the way to 120, you do see a little bit of an enhancement when it comes to basically moving around. And again, it comes down to when you're playing a game that requires a lot of motion. If you're playing like solitaire, obviously, or like something that's very stagnant where you only need like 1 frame per second, then you're not really going to tell the difference. But when you're playing a game that requires a lot of motion, right, a lot of movement, it'll really, like the 120 frames per second will really help you take advantage and kind of give you that little bit of an advantage when it comes to competing against other people online. So I'm going to hop right into it. These are my top 5 favorite games for the iPad Pro that take advantage of that 120 Hz display. So the first one has to be Magette. So Magette, I stumbled upon on the App Store because I was looking for games that took advantage of that 120 Hz display, the ProMotion display, and Magette came up and it was pretty well recommended. It's got great reviews. I think it's plus. All these games that I'm going to mention, by the way, are free. They do have in-app purchases, but to get the game is free, and they're usually above 4.5 stars, right? So Magette, again, it's a free game. There are in-app purchases, but it's very. If you guys have played Super Smash Brothers, that's what the layout is. So basically, you have one like side view of a map, and it's a horizontal movement. So basically you have one side of the person that you're controlling, and you're just battling, like a team of 5 battles another team of 5 in like a Super Smash Brothers type fighting situation. So it's a lot of fun. It does take advantage of the 120 frames per second, like I do mention. I didn't take advantage of the Xbox controller support, so the MFI support. All these games have that capability, but I just wanted to play on the Apple, or on the screen itself, to see if I can get away with playing it on the actual iPad Pro screen. So that's Magette. Magette, again, is very fun. Highly recommend it. I'm going to link all these games below if you guys do want to try them out. Again, they're free, so if you guys want to pass some time by playing some of these games, 100% go for it. But again, this one takes advantage of the 120 frames per second, and again, you can tell there's a lot of movement in this game. You're shooting a lot. You're trying to avoid getting shot. You're jumping up and down. You're flying. So all that movement, the more frame rates you have, the more interactive and the more responsive the screen and what you're doing is going to be when playing this game. You'll see a trend, and a common trend when it comes to these games. A lot of these are going to be shooting games. A lot of these they're going to be fighting games and movement games. I haven't really been able to find a sports game, sadly, that takes advantage of the 120 FPS. And at the same time, I don't know how much it'll help, but I'll keep going with my list. So the next game is going to be Ink, Mountains, and Mystery. So this game is actually the one game that's kind of different from the shooting aspect. It's kind of like a RPG role-playing game where you control one person and just move around in an open world, right? It's not like a super free world where you can kind of move around any place you want. There is kind of a guide, and you basically just touch on the screen to where you want to go. And where the 120 FPS for this game kind of really helps out isn't really with when you're playing somebody online or competing. It's more with the movement of the game. So the point of this game is to be very pleasant to play. Like, you'll be able to, it tells you when you start the game for optimal play, put headphones on, because it wants you to listen to like the creak in the background and wants you to see how the water and the fish how the fish reacts into when it goes into the water and things like that. So the 120 FPS just kind of helps with the fluidity of what you're seeing and how realistic it is. So the higher the FPS, the more, the more precise like rippling effect you see when like something splashes into water, and the better the mirroring is of like your person being reflected off of that water. So that's where that 120 FPS starts to also, that's how these games start to take advantage of that 120 FPS ProMotion display. So that's a good game. It's a slower game, so it's not as interactive as, as intense, but it's a good game to kind of pass the time, and you can kind of just stop playing it whenever you want in autosave. So that's an amazing feature. The next game has to be the classic Fortnite, guys. So Fortnite recently got updated to allow for that 120 FPS support. Max Tech actually made a great video on explaining what the differences are like and how much it actually helps. So I'll link their video below, and they're a great channel. But again, so Fortnite, it needs no explanation. It's a first-person shooter. You can use it with your Xbox controller or any other MFI controller that the iPad can support, so PS4 or any third-party ones. And it's just a shooting game. So obviously, the more frames per second you get, the better the reaction time is, or the more sensitive it is to what you're doing and how you're moving, then obviously it's going to give you somewhat of an advantage. And I do think that since Fortnite matches you with, like if you're playing Fortnite on a mobile device, like the iPad, like the iPhone, it matches you up with people that are also at that disadvantage of playing on a screen, right? But I think Fortnite knows if you're going to 120 FPS, it'll match you with other people playing at 120 FPS. And if you're playing with a controller, I think Fortnite also knows that, and it'll either put you against people that are playing with a controller, so somebody that's playing on a system or on an actual gaming computer, or I remember before it got to the point where people getting kicked out and banned from playing from their mobile devices because they were using an Xbox controller on the go, and that clearly gives you an advantage when playing against other people. So just keep that in mind, guys. So if you are playing on the iPad at 120 FPS with an Xbox controller, chances are you're not going to be playing the guy on their iPhone 7 playing on the train with low data connectivity with no controller. Just so you guys know, that's how they level the playing field. But again, Fortnite needs no explanation. Fortnite is Fortnite. Then the second to last game is going to be Standoff. This is also another first-person shooter game. It's more Call of Duty-esque in terms of they try to make it a little more realistic. It's still not as realistic as Call of Duty. It's a little more gamey and arcadey, but it's kind of like a military style. You play in teams. There's different versions of that, of like types of games and mini games you can play within the game, like team deathmatch, like a free-for-all kind of situation, things like that. So again, first-person shooter, and for a lot of these games, you can actually go into your settings and toggle between 60 and 120, and also it'll let you show in the top right corner what the actual frame rate is. So for this game, I hovered between 105 and 119. I don't think I saw it hit. I don't think I actually saw it hit the 120 FPS mark, but at the end of the day, you are at an advantage if you are playing against somebody who is playing at 60 FPS. And again, this game is MFI compatible as well, and it's a lot of fun. So if you guys want to play some team deathmatch games, and it's quick how it connects you, that's what the amazing thing is about these games. There's so many people on these platforms now that you get to connect instantly. I remember back in the day, like 10 years ago, when Xbox Live was first kind of coming out 10, 12 years ago, it would take so long for me to get matched up to play against somebody in like Madden 2007. We've come a long way. So basically you get matched up immediately and you're playing within a minute. So that is, and then the last one is going to be Vainglory. So Vainglory is a very League of Legends type kind of game, very Age of Mythology. So you still control only one character, but you're in a team of 5 and you're on a map and you basically battle 5v5 to see who wins. And that's exactly what League of Legends is. And there is like an RPG situation where you gain levels, add attachments, equip new items, things like that. But again, the 120 FPS helps when you're moving like the camera and the viewing angles, when you're moving around and actually slashing away at people and things like that. It just makes for games like League of Legends don't really need that 120 FPS for advantage from a gameplay standpoint. It just helps with the look and the fluidity of the game when you're actually playing it, right? So those are my 5 games, guys. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys have heard of some of them, especially Fortnite, obviously, but definitely give it a try. All these games work on iPhones also. They're not just for people that have 120 hertz displays, but it's just amazing how something so thin and light like an iPad Pro has the capability to use a game at 120 frames per second, guys. It's the world that we're getting into, and it's just going to keep getting better and keep getting better. And I do hope that they bring the 120 ProMotion display to the next iPhone, because that's one thing we're missing. And I hear it's I haven't used anything above 60 FPS on a phone. And obviously people have been loving the OnePlus phones at 90 hertz, and now the new Samsung phone at 120 hertz. they say like it's night and day different, and I haven't had the opportunity to kind of play around like that and see that night and day difference when it comes to iPhones, right? So that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this helped somebody out in choosing different games to play and trying out. Again, don't forget to follow me on Twitter down here, and eventually I'll have that giveaway going, guys. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, peace.